want to go to the restroom, Jordan? Okay, we're still short a few people. We're going to go ahead and start. If they miss their time slot, they'll still get to speak, the ones who haven't gotten here yet. So welcome, everybody. I'm Steve Child, Chairman of the Board of County Commissioners. I really just want to welcome you here today. Thank you for your interest in the airport visioning process. And thank those of you who served for months and months on the various committees. Your work is truly appreciated by all of us. We've all been reading through all the committee reports and the summaries. So you can rest assured that the work that you have done is being paid attention to, as will your comments at the public hearing today. So John Peacock is going to give an introduction of not too many slides on a slideshow. He will also be the timekeeper today, and he'll be sitting here with a big screen that has your 3 minutes on there. I urge all of you, I mean, I know every one of you could probably talk for 10 minutes, but if you want to say more than 3 minutes worth, you're going to have to write down your comments and send them in to us. And anything that's written, we'll pay as much attention to that as we do to what you say here today. So welcome, and I'll hand it over to John.
All right, thanks, Steve. So as Steve already said, we're just going to go over a real quick history. The time today is really dedicated to public comment. How times have changed, right? I think for those of you who are part of this process, I can remember one of our meetings where I believe we had 210 people in this room to see the future of aviation in a carbon-constrained world. Obviously, with the pandemic, that all has changed. As has our process just a little bit. Today is really an opportunity for us to start hearing from members of the public, and for many of you, you were on the advisory committees, about your thoughts on the Vision Committee's common ground recommendations for future developments at the airport. Those comments, as Steve said, are going to be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And it's really, today is about listening. After the public comment is concluded, it will adjourn. This is really the continuation of a unprecedented public process around airport planning. The board created 5 advisory groups, 4 of which specialized in areas to advise and make recommendations to the Vision Committee, which was tasked with pulling together a final set of recommendations. And those recommendations represent compromises, and oftentimes, I'd say hard-earned compromises between sometimes different goals and objectives. But we did have over 120 people participate in that process. Again, many of them are here in the room today, and that participation represent there are over 141 hours of committee meetings, not including the planning time and the homework and such that everyone put into it. So thank you very much for that. There are really 10 community values and 4 aspirational goals that motivated the common ground recommendations. I'm not going to read through all of these for you, but I would say that the 4 aspirational goals that the Vision Committee and the working groups really spent time around We're safety on the ground and in the air, reducing emissions by at least 30%, reducing noise by at least 30%, and managing growth, particularly employment growth, to a 0.8% target. That resulted in a common ground recommendation report that had 15 recommendations supported by 71 sub-recommendations for how the 15 recommendations could be achieved. And the goal of those common ground recommendations from the Vision Committee were the hope that the community would experience a safer airport, realization of the community goals for lower emissions, reduced noise, managed growth, an airport that maintains economic vitality and welcomes our visitors, and an airport that improves our environmental responsibility and sustainability. The other result was it significantly changed the proposed improvements on the ground. I am not going to go through all of these right now, but it really results in a different airport layout plan than was proposed in the environmental assessment as an effort to achieve the common ground goals and objectives. And if these recommendations are adopted by the board, it would initiate a new process with the FAA to have a new airport layout plan approved, as well as additional NEPA, National Environmental Policy. Excuse me, that's not COVID. That was a, it gets self-conscious coughing these days. Process to look at the environmental impacts of those changes, particularly on the west side of the runway. At the end of the day, the result that the Vision Committee believes that they achieved was a set of compromises that achieved the 4 community goals, and that really resulted in a dramatically different plan from that was proposed and approved in the 2018 environmental assessment. And the basic assessment of the Vision Committee was that the plan approved in 2018 was frankly noisier and dirtier than what is proposed in the common ground recommendations of the Vision Committee. So with that, I again just wanted to quickly review. I hope everyone has had an opportunity to review the full report and over 70 recommendations, specific recommendations that were made. Today is an opportunity to hear people's thoughts again on those recommendations, on what the Vision Committee has proposed, to help inform the board on their future decision-making about what will and what will not be directed to move forward at the airport. Couple of quick ground rules. Public speaking is hard. It's not something that folks naturally like to do, and so I just ask everyone to be respectful of every person's right to express their opinion. This has been a difficult community discussion, and there's been a lot of passions and thoughts on a lot of different aspects of these recommendations. And I'm sure there's a lot of passion in this room. And so we just ask that, that as an audience, you refrain from those expressions of approval or disapproval, and respect each other's time to be in front of the board and express your opinion. So tonight, the 3 minutes is going to be measured on a timer. I'll be sitting right here, It will start off with a green screen. As you get down to 30 seconds left, it'll turn yellow. And as we've run out of time, it'll turn red, just so you have an idea where you sit. Those of you who have participated in these before know this process because we've used this timer on this exact iPad several times now. Other thing, logistically, Rich Engelhart, can you raise your hand, Rich? I think most of you know Rich now. We'll be calling speakers, so we're going to call the first person to speak, and then also the next person to be on deck so that you understand who's going to be coming up next. I will say our COVID-19 guidelines do require us to do a wipe down in between speakers. So Sandra, if you could raise your hand. Sandra is ready with wipes, but just be sure to give her a second to do the necessary wipe downs and take the precautions that we're all taking to protect ourselves and our community today. With that, I think unless there are any questions from the board, we can get started with our speakers.
Okay, thank you. All right, nice.
Come on up and
Is this on? Okay, we're live here. All right, so it's nice to be able to introduce this like somebody's on deck because I love baseball and it's a chance to get somebody on deck here. So the first speaker is going to be Evan Marks. If you come on up, and then Wayne Etheridge, you will follow. No, you can just so that you know, you can prepare yourself. So you bet. Yeah, in the dugout.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for allowing me to go first. For the record, I am in favor of all of the common ground recommendations. I asked to be first, however, this afternoon because I'd like to identify one area that I think the entire community can get around. My name is Evan Marks. I'm the most recent appointment to the county's Financial Advisory Board. With the help of the Vision Committee, the BOCC has examined the development of a new airport from a variety of different lenses, but I'd like to recommend to you one additional lens, and that is basic macroeconomics. As commissioners, you may recall that when I interviewed for the FAB, I cautioned that the then current economic expansion was very long in the tooth. At that work session, before you appointed me to the FAB, I recommended that the county identify new public works projects of a size and scale similar to 530 East Main Street. I encouraged you to be well-positioned to stimulate the local economy when the inevitable economic bust occurred. Of course, here we are 9 months later, and no one could have ever considered at that time that we would be smack dab in the middle of a full-blown economic collapse as a result of some mysterious pandemic, but here we are. Downtown Aspen seems very vibrant today. But come the autumn, all of those out-of-state license plates will vanish, unemployment will surge again, and we'll be left to clean up the aftermath of an extremely deep economic contraction. There's little argument in our community that the least contentious aspect of the new airport project is the replacement of its existing terminal facility. And I'd like to focus on that element for a moment. The current terminal has outlived its useful life. It's too small, it's obsolete, it's energy inefficient. It also, if that isn't bad enough, it has very dangerous, in some cases, unsafe working conditions. Getting back to the economics that I mentioned, recalling FDR's Works Progress Administration from the Great Depression, the replacement of the county's existing terminal can be an exquisitely timed example of a powerful counter-cyclical critical infrastructure project that may be fast-tracked by our community. If we begin the planning now, apart from the runway, most of the tradesmen currently working on Aspen's many large construction projects, including the new City Hall, upon their completion, may retain their jobs by simply moving their place of work down the valley. This past November, I presented a brief analysis to staff about this very topic. Prophetically, it was entitled, New ASE Terminal, Job Impact During Coming Recession. Go figure. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but the analysis was modeled after a recently completed similarly sized terminal.
3 minutes.
Okay. The bottom line is that a new terminal will create more than 400 full-time equivalent jobs for Roaring Fork Valley residents over a period of 2 years. That's 400 full-time equivalent jobs for Roaring Fork Valley residents over 2 years. I think we can all get behind that.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you, Evan. Okay, Wayne, you're next, and then Phil Holstein, you're on deck.
Good afternoon. I'm Wayne Etheridge. I'm a resident of W/J subdivision. I'd like to thank the commissioners for appointing me to the Community Character Working Group after I killed my phone. But I don't forgive that easily. The ASE, it's a joke. The ASE Vision Committee established to review the future of the airport. We're presented with a binary choice: move the runway to the west and widen the runway, or support the status quo runway location and dimensions. Since neither the community character, technical experience, nor focus group had the opportunity to review the Vision Committee's plan, it cannot be reasonably considered a consensus document. It's also entirely unreasonable to assume, as stated in the Vision Committee's executive summary, that the proposed plan will appeal to most of our community. Without a vote of the public, I don't believe you can make that statement, and I'll address that at the end of my remarks. All committees were given instructions to view their recommendations through the lens of the Community Character Working Group. One of the principal conclusions of the CCWG was that the community, quote, proceed with airside improvements only after, and that's underlined, the community has determined a baseline to include air quality, local emissions, noise levels, vehicle trips, discuss their impacts, both positive and negative, and confirm targets. Tellingly, the Vision Committee failed to address the CCW's recommendation, instead filling the report with gross generalities such as aviation emissions typically represent less than 5% of a region's criteria pollutants. This is consultant speak. The Community Character Working Group was concerned about existing levels of pollution created by an airport that is unusually close to population centers such as the North 40 and recreational amenities such as buttermilk. You all know people in the region who are already heavily impacted by poor air quality and excessive noise impacts, most of which are generated by the operations of private aircraft, whose operations were largely ignored by the Vision Committee. The Vision Committee report casually throws out a statistic that the quantity of Jet A fuel dispensed at the airport, a rough proxy for aircraft greenhouse gas emissions, increased by 40% between 2014 and 2017. You know that's not sustainable. What the residents of North 40 are smelling, and those that are guests at Buttermilk, is partially burned jet fuel, which is a volatile organic compound, essentially kerosene. In addition, they're inhaling fine, dangerous particles of soot. I understand the pressure the Vision Committee was under to produce a report, and members should be thanked for that effort. I also believe that the potential loss of commercial air service is a red herring and has been since I've been here for 40 years. I believe this needs to go to a vote. You may not like the language that SOS presented, but please put your own on there. We have an important election coming up, and this issue should be on that ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. Phil, you're up, and then next is Valerie Braun.
I'll try to be brief. The Aspen-Pitkin County Airport, which was Sardi Field when I moved here, is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it gets people to Aspen up at the end of our valley quickly. It's a curse for the same reason. The airport has negative impacts on people that live around the airport and down valley from the airport. And if the airport is expanded to include larger, heavier aircraft, the effect upon the valley could well be devastating. I want to read a quick statement from one of the former airport managers, Brad Christopher. He says, as with most rural resort environments with low ambient noise levels, any noise emissions, especially during the evening hours, are a serious local environmental concern. Aspen is no exception. In addition, Aspen may be unique as a result of the increased sound transmission in low humidity, high altitude, valley-constrained environments. The Federal Aviation Administration has failed to recognize that single event noise is a very real and damaging problem around airports. This is especially true in a rural environment. The aircraft noise problem that we experience are single event noise problems rather than average noise problems, and are well documented through noise complaints. The location of what I still sometimes call Sardi Field is unfortunately right up against the boundary of the city. It is no place for a hub-type airport. I completely back the necessity of building a new terminal. We should have a state-of-the-art terminal that is recognized throughout the world as a terminal that is a regional terminal. There are many, many resort areas with similar problems. We need a new terminal. We do not need a larger, more hub-type airport.
And Phil, you have reached your 3 minutes.
Okay, we should keep the airport runway as it is, which really fulfills all the needs that we require here.
Thank you, Phil.
Good, thank you, Phil. Okay, Valerie, you're up, and then Eric Tibby.
Braun, and I live in the Woody Creek area. I've been serving as a member of the ASE Vision Committee for well over a year. At the April 2020 virtual presentation of the ASE Vision Common Ground recommendations to the BOCC, I spoke as the lone dissenting vote against part of the recommendation. Hopefully you've had a chance to read the minority report. As I said in April, there's a great deal I can support in the Common Ground recommendations. However, I believe it is clear that the minority report does represent important differences between the recommendations and public sentiment throughout the community. I believe it is imperative that the public be kept informed with how this process has moved forward. If there has been no progress for whatever reason, you know what? I want to go back just 1 second. COVID has turned our world upside down, and I completely understand how challenging it must be dealing with the public health emergency. However, it was agreed upon that there would be a time frame allowed to communicate with the FAA and the airlines serving Aspen regarding the ASE Vision recommendations, which vastly differ from the original FAA-approved environmental assessment. I believe it's imperative that the public be kept informed with how this process has moved forward. If there has been no progress for whatever reason, that should be shared with the public. If the FAA has not responded to the Common Ground recommendations, that should be shared. If the airlines have agreed to purchase the Airbus 220-100 for exclusive use in Aspen, as was recommended by the Common Ground document, that should be shared. No matter where we are with the progress of the project, I'm quite certain that it will take a great deal longer to accomplish anything with regard to redevelopment of the Aspen Airport due to the economic realities we face in the aftermath of COVID. All that being said, the thing you could do right now, no matter what the final decision on the redevelopment of the Aspen Airport by the BOCC, whether that's to do nothing and leave the airport as it is for now, accept the Common Ground recommendations as presented, or fall back and do the project the FAA approved in the environmental assessment. The thing you can and must do is to complete reasonable, reliable, responsible studies on the impacts of noise and emissions, not only around the airport itself, but within our entire community. The one thing that is demonstratively provable is the void left by fewer commercial flights due to the COVID pandemic was completely filled and then substantially grew the number of general aviation operations at the Aspen Airport. My understanding is that there's only one noise monitoring station for the Aspen Airport, which I believe is located in the Woody Creek area. No monitoring at Buttermilk, the Aspen Airport Business Center, or the Gateway community. That is just not going to lead to a true study of the impact of noise created by airport operations. The community has not been made privy to any details regarding the monitoring program for emissions. In order for the community to truly understand and accept the impacts of operations at the airport, these studies must be so thorough, so substantial, so trusted and believable that the community will have the confidence and likelihood to support long-term decision-making on the overall redevelopment of the airport. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Valerie. Okay, Eric Tibby. Okay, no show. John Selich? Is there John Selich? Okay, Tim Mooney? Wow, that's awesome. Welcome, Tim.
Right up here, Tim, right up at this.
Right up to the podium there, if you would. And then Bill Dinsmore, you're on deck.
Tim, there will be a timer right here.
Wow, thanks for reminding me of that. I didn't think you would forget, but I'm glad you told me. So I prepared a bunch of stuff, thought about a bunch of stuff to say, and clearly I'm walking in and just making it up. But what's in my heart about this is it's about growth. And I can't believe that you're unaware of what the unintended consequences of a massive $500 million new airport is going to do to our lifestyle, is going to do to our impacts, to our infrastructure. And you have to start to think, well, how did this even get started? And it was like Tomsich saying the CJ7 is going to go away and that, we have to be competitive. And industrial tourism is the model. The cruise ship mentality is where the ski company wants to go with their business plan. And if they don't have a bigger airport with bigger planes and more people coming in, they're not going to be able to compete. And that's crap. And we know now, after months and months of meetings and talks, that the CJ7 is a myth. And that if you just stop and think of that one thing that started this whole debate, we should go back to square one and say, why do we need a bigger airport? Why do we need another 100,000 people a year coming to Aspen just to sit in the seats where the locals live? Why aren't we doing an environmental assessment of how these impacts are going to affect Basalt and Carbondale? It's gridlocked to get over the bridge in Glenwood right now, and it's been that way all summer. So if you think you can just grow your bottom line, your biggest revenue source, and not talk to the city, not talk to Snowmass, not talk to Basalt about what those impacts are going to be, well, who are you people? Why are you doing this? Who brought this to the point where we've spent millions of dollars to chase this down the hole. I mean, it's growth. It's expanding the industrial, tourism, commercialism model. And we have an airport that's 90 minutes away that already has everything that you guys are dreaming of. And so we barely need it. If they took the flights out of Eagle that they could use to supplement our tourist business, it just costs the tourists a little bit more money. It just costs the ski company a little bit more money to put them on buses when they sell their package deals, their all-inclusive deals. But it wouldn't affect us with our parking, with our air, with our water, with our kids in school. You've got to figure this out. If you don't have a gut feeling that this is a bad growth move, period, and get off the idea that
You're at 3 minutes.
that airline service is going to go away, or that the FAA is going to revert us back to a Class 2 airport. We asked for months to validate those fear-backed statements, and no one ever said, this is the source of that. This is who we're talking to at the FAA. This is why we're
Tim,
afraid.
You're well over your time.
Thank you.
Your bill? Yes. Oh, okay. John McBride, you're up, and then Howie Mallory.
Well, I first of all have to applaud this community for the attention and care they put into this airport. I think it's spectacular. It's a real difficult challenge. It's a very unusual airport. It's the most dangerous airport in the country, and it is the third largest airport in our state, so it requires special attention and care. I just want in this short time to address, first of all, I appreciate the comments of so many other people that are so important. Having been a pilot for 55 years and done most of my flying in the mountains, I want to just address mainly safety. I remember the first meeting we had a vote, and 118 people or whatever said their greatest concern was safety. Mine is too. It's a very unusual airport, high altitude, near in mountains and what have you. I was very glad that the runway was not moved to the west, and I think there is merit in discussing the idea of putting some GA on the other side of the airport. That will increase safety, but it will not in the slightest if we build a crossing anywhere near the middle of the runway. I think that is absurd. When you take off one direction and land the other direction, and then you have small planes crossing near the middle of the field, it's really dangerous. I think it's essential that the county condemn some land on the west side so a taxiway can be built there to make the airport safer. I think that is essential. Also, as you know, we've had like 50 crashes in 55 years of people coming and going from the airport. I believe that we could do a lot to improve that. Maybe require special training, or at least have a booklet that goes out to fixed base operations around the country about the dangers of flying into a high altitude airport. That's unacceptable to have that many accidents. Anyway, but back to the heart of it all, I appreciate all you've done and the care from members of this community. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
John, thank you. Okay, Howie? And then on deck is Matt, I'm going to butcher your last name, although, did you want to comment, Matt? Is it Matt Godinker? Oh, okay, all right. Oh, all right.
Hi, I'm Howie Mallory. And I was on the technical working group. Back in January, our technical working group met in this room with the rest of the advisory committees, and we gave our recommendation to support the widening of the runway to accommodate the future wingspans of the most probable next generation airplanes coming into Aspen. I think what we didn't realize that we had the ability to move the runway off of its present alignment closer to the terminal, and I think that's been an improvement over what the recommendation that we gave. However, the technical working group, in leading up to this recommendation, spent a lot of time talking just about wingspan, landing weight, speeds, travel range, passenger capacity, et cetera, but we spent very little time discussing noise levels produced by both commercial and general aviation. Our discussions really were such that when we looked at the noise level metrics that were provided at our meetings, we would accept for further discussion those planes whose average noise level was below the CRJ 700 and keep that in the list, but anything above that CRJ level, we sort of kicked out of the room. But it wasn't very sophisticated. It was just a rather generalized approach to trying to get down to some approved airplanes. We didn't spend time on approach, idling, takeoff noises. We were reminded that these measurement metrics that were provided to us were logarithmic. Does anybody know how logarithmic audio measurements go? No one does. We didn't know. We didn't have the experiential data and understanding what these noise levels really meant. As a result, we really weren't able to address confidently and responsibly the goals of reducing noise levels by 30%. But because noise is such a pervasive and sensitizing issue in the community, I think that there's some work to be done on that. I think it's already been talked about by several of the previous speakers, but I suggest that the county undertake a comprehensive noise measurement process using the best professionals around, and I would suggest that the county consider reactivating the technical working group or some iteration thereof to oversee this process so we get the best possible results, both for commercial and general aviation noise measurements. There's another benefit I think that we should keep in mind, that if we establish adequate and defensible noise metrics which are acceptable and not acceptable, will help in our discussions with the FAA that we have another tool in our toolbox for more local control in our local control over levels of commercial and general aviation traffic. Thank you.
Thanks, Howie.
Good, Howie, thank you. Okay, Heather Kemp. No Heather. Jackie Merrill, you're up. And then following Jackie will be Bill Sterling. Did you want to say anything, Jackie?
Well, I wanted to ask a question, John. Is that all right?
You can, we may not answer it right now, but we can get it on the, yep.
Hi, everybody. So my question for the commissioners and whoever else is giving input is what, if any, as best you can tell, are going to be the impacts, not just of the pandemic, but the economic hardships that have happened on either the financing by the FAA or the airplane manufacturers or you name it. What's going to be the impact on our timeline for any changes, if at all, and if not, when not, to our plans, period.
Okay. Okay, Jackie, thank you. Okay, Bill Sterling, and then Auden Schindler is up after that on deck.
I just have a couple of thoughts. The novel virus that we're all engaged with all over the world will subside eventually. We don't know exactly when. But what's really looming over the planet is climate change. And population control right along with climate change. We've seen an amazing worldwide response to this novel virus albeit a bit novel with each country and agonizingly slow in some countries. And, but we've seen the delight that people in India have felt by seeing the sky for the first time in 3 decades. And our own air and light at night has been better than it's been since I first moved here in '72. The world could come to grips with climate change, like with the virus, and possibly hold on to the remnants of this planet as we've known it. We have had such incredible enjoyment of this planet in our lifetimes, and what we're leaving is looming as a total disaster. Doing the right thing environmentally with our airport is how Aspen can truly be a part of a worldwide dialogue to address climate change. And I think leaving the runway where it is and moving the taxiway, trying to cut costs and time are all good ideas, and I think they should be at the heart of what moves forward. The terminal is the key. It will be probably the largest building on the western slope that's enclosed. And so it's got to be aesthetically and architecturally a really pleasing building, an important building, a building that we all want to see and enjoy. And it also has to be net zero. It has to be net zero. Could some of the airport land be also used for solar arrays or charging electric cars or other things like that where that's practical and safe? We should look into that possibility because there is a lot of land there. So for me, the key question is, when will there be an electric plane?
Good, thank you, Bill. Okay, Auden, and then up next would be Bill Tomsich, and then Richard Arnold, you'll follow him.
Hi, everyone, and perfect segue from Bill on the electric plane. Bill and I have been banging our heads on climate in the region for more than 25 years. And when you look at the numbers for Aspen, you know how to deal with buildings, it's difficult. You know how to deal with transportation because you can electrify it. Airplanes and airports have always been the big problem. So from a climate perspective, this really is a no-brainer. It would reduce emissions 30% by bringing in new planes. And it's also of a piece with the other difficult steps that you've taken that are large-scale and nation-leading. And I'm talking about most recently, the 5-megawatt solar array, which is going to be a remarkable achievement for the Valley. If you read Paul Hawkins' book, Drawdown, and you go to the section on airplanes, it says the number one thing you can do is to retire existing dirty aircraft and replace them. And that's what's required. That's why we need a new airport, so that we can do that and go to the next level. We don't have an electric airplane yet. The best thing you can do is efficiency. If we don't do this, we miss one of the biggest opportunities to not just reduce CO2 emissions here, but to do what Aspen does best, which is model for the rest of the nation and the world. The last piece is, if we aren't able to move to these newer planes, the older planes are more likely to have to stop in Denver. And when you add a leg to air travel, as you know, most of the emissions occur during takeoff. So Aspen Skiing Company strongly supports these common ground recommendations. And importantly, we don't have a cruise ship model for our business. We're not trying to increase traffic. If the airport stayed the same as it has been, we'd be happy, we'd be successful, and that would be great. So I want to thank you for looking hard at this and for allowing our public comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Auden. Okay, Bill, and then followed by Richard.
Thank you. My name is Bill Tomsich. I've been here for about 25 years and have been deeply involved with the airport, even though I've worn many hats over those decades. I've also served on the technical working group, so thank you for appointing me to that group. And I've seen a lot of change over those 25 years. In 1995, Continental Airlines, through Continental Express, was one of the two main carriers flying in and out of the airport. Actually, it was 94. That was when they shut down their Denver Stapleton hub and got rid of all their fleets of turboprops, the ATRs and the Dash 7s that used to fly into Aspen. Continental exited the Aspen market and hasn't been back since, although they did end up getting ultimately merged into United Airlines. Fast forward another decade later, in 2006, the old BA 146s and the Avro RJ 85s that were flown for United Express and Northwest also were grounded and retired as they became less efficient to operate. 2 years after that, the Dash 8s that US Airways / America West Express used to fly into Aspen also got retired, and we lost US Airways, although they ultimately got merged into American. 4 years later, Frontier Airlines, which had served our market for 4 years, was flying Q400s. Very well-known aircraft. It was a great fit to this market, but they got rid of that aircraft as it started to age, and Frontier hasn't been back since. So finally, we're facing the CRJ 700. Those aircraft that are still flying today were built between 2005 and 2011. No new CRJ 700s have been built since. To put this in perspective, picture an automobile manufactured from 05 to 11. This is before the days of backup cameras, Bluetooth, auto-following cruise control, lane assist, and even the automated turn signal warning lights. This is the kind of aircraft that is serving our market with something that's more than a decade old in most cases, and they are going to run out of time at some point in time. In fact, Delta has already grounded all but 3 of their CRJ 700s, and this is a new development that's happened since our last meeting. And their last flight out of Aspen to Salt Lake was on July 7th. They're hopeful to come back this winter, but it's far from assured. So Delta and their CRJ 700s could be the next victim, and it's going to happen sooner than later. And eventually, it's going to happen to the remaining CRJ 700s that fly for American and United. There is now one aircraft that actually fits within our wingspan restriction. It's the Embraer E175, and it possibly could be made to operate here, but at a lighter capacity, which is contrary to one of the primary goals of fewer emissions per passenger. I am strongly supportive of the Common Ground recommendations as outlined here. I think there are more compelling reasons to move forward with this now than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, Richard, you're up, and then Ellen Anderson.
Better wipe it down real quick. You're close.
My name's Dick Arnold. First time in Aspen was back in the early 60s. Then I came back and had a number of businesses and jobs in town, but the most important was based around the airport. I learned to fly here, subsequently got all of my ratings, and started a flight school and a charter business called Tailwinds. After that, I was asked by the county to put my hat in the ring for the airport manager's job. I was the airport manager in the late 80s for a number of years. Same time, I was with Mountain Rescue for well over 25 years. So my history is based 100% on safety. I've taken bodies out of airplanes all over. Does that mean the airport caused it? No. The guy driving the machine caused it. But he was pressured to get in here by the boss who had one of these houses and wanted to get in tonight. We've got to concentrate on that. The FAA is still fairly open and fairly loose about that. But I think the airport or the commissioners, I'm not sure how it would work, could possibly set some standards for general aviation flying in here. If not a qualified to fly in Aspen certificate, at least to offer education through the computers, to whatever, to say that we have a unique, very dangerous airport, especially when the weather goes down. There's a lot of traffic, and before you come in here from wherever, you need to know and be aware of the following. It's never been done at most airports, at any airport. Should it be done at Aspen? Absolutely. We've got to increase the safety. I was involved as the airport manager to widen the runway from 75 feet. I convinced the FAA to put in runway lights before there was any night flying, safety. I helped with the instrument approach initially for the airlines that didn't have one, which subsequently went to general aviation, thank God. My point, though, is that I think the runway should stay where it is. There can be some adjustments on widening it. I think that maybe general aviation should move to the other side of the airport where there's more room, more safety again. The terminal definitely needs to be upgraded. I was involved with the terminal too, not as the contractor, but I did a lot of work with the terminal, and now it needs to be helped. So, my time's up. Thank you, and you guys have a lot on your plates to do this. Just please, please think safety first. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Ellen had requested to go last. Is there anybody else that came in that we had skipped over? Okay, Ellen, you're up, and Ellen's got a couple of slides. Instead of handing out paper, I had her email those to me, so we've put those in here for her, so.
Wipe twice here so I can get your slides that you sent. And then if you use the down arrow to roll me. So if you use the just the down arrow, it'll flip through for you.
Okay. My name is Ellen Anderson. I've lived here forever. I want to just talk about two things, safety and pollution. I have these slides, but I'm not sure, I'm not going to have time to go through them. I just want to make a couple quick points. And I want to get to the last one first, because this one hasn't been addressed, in case I run out of time. And that's about pollution. We're green here in Aspen. We don't like to use plastic bags. It's well known. Well, an engineer at SpaceX did a calculation on what's the equivalent in plastic bags of one trip from LAX to Aspen, as opposed to a commercial CRJ 700. And the upshot is, if I take one trip on a private plane on a G650, instead of going on the CRJ 700, I'm using the crude oil equivalent of 10,000 more plastic bags, more plastic bags than if I flew commercial. Now, if I use 5 plastic bags a week, that's 30 years of plastic bags. So by one person taking a private aircraft instead of a commercial, you've just wiped out 30 years of me doing the right thing and bringing my bags to City Market. That we have to think about. People have mentioned that the whole house of cards, the whole premise is a house of cards. CRJ is not going out anytime soon. I have documentation for everything. I want to submit it to county commissioners, just like a thesis with an appendix. Everything is documented. The first I heard about the CRJ going out was in 2013. They said, oh, it's going to start going out in 2018, and by 2021, they're going to be mostly gone. That was at a BOCC work session. As you know, that hasn't turned out. CRJs now, in fact, are being bought up by United, Delta, SkyWest, Air Canada, and some of those airframes, although they're not being made new airframes, are being converted to the CRJ 550s, which are more luxurious, fewer seats, more legroom, perfect for Aspen. I want to talk a little bit about safety. According to, let me go through,
We all remember the Challenger, right? That was tragic, just sad. This is from Picken County GIS. It's 1,652.6 feet from the end of the runway, the extended runway, to the Buttermilk parking lot. That's 0.3 of a mile. That's not very far. At Buttermilk, we have Powder Pandas, and during the X Games, we have 10,000 people. But it's been said, you're not supposed to land on that 1,000-foot extension of the runway. That's only for takeoff. So that's, you're not going to have planes crashing in. But I would like to remind you that Greg Murnane was not supposed to land on Highway 82, and that Dr. Rodney Kirk was not supposed to land on the Maroon Creek Club. And that plane that landed on the house in Holland Hills, that wasn't supposed to happen either. Accidents happen, and that is not very far. Bigger planes that have the wing-mounted engines are not as maneuverable. They will yaw into the direction of the dead engine. The fuselage-mounted...
Ellen, you're well past.
Yeah, okay, are more nimble. I just have to give you this thing in writing. I will do it. I have gone to the trouble of doing all these charts on every flight operation. The red is private, the blue is commercial. I did a lot of work on that, and there's a lot of information. I think it's really too bad that we spent all this time, and I get 3 minutes. It's just, I'm going to go to a lot of work and send it to you in writing. So, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ellen. That's it, as far as those that were signed up to speak.
Then, Rich, our next meeting is a Zoom meeting, which will be on the
17th, it's on Monday, from 4 to 8, it's scheduled. There's, you can go on our Picken County website, sign up there to observe the meeting. Those that spoke tonight won't be able to Zoom in and speak, but we're hoping to get a good turnout on the Zoom side, so.
All right, and with that, Steve, that I think, unless there's anyone else to make comments here.
Everybody here?
You. So, Steve, to you.
Steve, it's you.
Yeah, no, I'd be fine with,
No, the meeting today is up to you to close it, or?
Yeah, that's all we have for this meeting.
mm-hmm.
Do you want to close it, Steve, or do you close the meeting?
Let's see, let me get my note out.
Sorry, Steve.
So thank you very much. A lot of what you people said was kind of reiterating what was in the written reports we've gotten. There were some new ideas presented today that I hadn't seen in writing. Maybe I sort of thought of them in my head, but I think those are going to be critical pieces for us in thinking about this. Now, I would urge all of you, if you wish, to send us your written comments. I think particularly about the new ideas that have been presented. So I'm thinking, like Ellen, I really appreciate that you're going to be sending your idea to us. John, you presented the idea of the taxiway, clear up the runway and not having the crossing. I've thought of that too, but do some drawings and, give us a visual on that, because we haven't seen that. Evan, your remarks on the financial aspects of it is, almost a game-changing way to think about it, and I'd appreciate more information on that. All of you pretty much had some new thoughts that were new to me, maybe not new to everybody, but We really appreciate the thought you've put into this, and we have a big job ahead of us as our Board of Commissioners. We'll be having one more listening session. We'll be going over all the written material again and then start making the decisions on this. It's tricky in the pandemic time to, obviously, to be moving forward, but we're doing the best we can. We were hoping to have this, big public meeting like this with 100 people here months ago. And we finally just had to do it this way with a smaller crowd. But thank you all for coming today, and we look forward to your further input. Keep in mind that you cannot speak on the Zoom call. You'd be welcome to observe it on Monday. So with that, we'll close this meeting.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.